The morning rush at Denver International Airport moved like a river of footsteps and rolling suitcases. Steady, predictable, harmless. Overhead, the announcements echoed against gleaming glass panels, and travelers hurried toward their gates with coffees still steaming in their hands. And then, everything shattered. Ranger, a 4-year-old German Shepherd K9, known across the department for his calm discipline, suddenly stopped mid-stride. His ears shot forward. His chest expanded. A deep, guttural growl rose through his ribcage, like a warning pulled straight out of instinct. Before Officer Miller could react, Ranger lunged, barking with an intensity that made the entire concourse freeze. His focus locked on a single person, a pregnant woman standing near gate C-27, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clutching her boarding pass. People screamed, suitcases toppled, someone yelled, "Get that dog under control." But Ranger didn't hear any of it. His paws dug hard against the polished floor, nails scraping, body trembling with a message no human could translate quickly enough. His bark wasn't aggression. It was urgency, a frantic alarm pulsing through every hair on his body. The woman stepped back, shaking. "I didn't do anything," she whispered, voice cracking. No one knew it yet, but Ranger wasn't trying to attack her. He was trying to stop something no human eyes or human instincts had sensed in time, something far more dangerous than anyone in that terminal had imagined. Before the chaos erupted, December sunlight poured through the vast windows of the Denver International Airport, tinting the terminal in soft gold. Travelers moved in predictable currents, families arguing about missing passports, business travelers typing furiously on phones, kids glued to tablets, TSA officers scanning the crowd with half-awake eyes. It was just another American morning at one of the busiest airports in the country. Officer Daniel Miller walked alongside Ranger, their steps perfectly synchronized after 4 years of partnership. Miller's gloved hand held the leash loosely, relaxed, the way he always carried it when Ranger was in his usual working rhythm. Ranger wasn't just trained. He was precise, steady, almost stoic. He had been the department's pride since the day he detected a gas leak in a parking tower moments before it ignited. He was the dog who didn't make mistakes. Their patrol route took them past a group of college students, a mother soothing a crying toddler, and a couple debating loudly about missing their connection. Ranger glanced at them all the way any working K9 would, brief, calculating, uninterested, nothing unusual, nothing threatening. And then Miller saw her, a pregnant woman, mid-30s perhaps, walking slowly with both hands on her stomach, her face pale, her breathing steady but strained. She moved carefully, as though each step required its own decision. Her name, though neither Miller nor Ranger knew it yet, was Emily Stokes, and she was on her way home to Boston for the holidays. Miller barely noticed her beyond a respectful nod, but Ranger noticed everything. The dog lifted his head slightly, nostrils fluttering, his ears twitched. Something in the air, something faint, metallic and wrong, brushed against his instincts. He slowed his pace without being commanded, his tail lowering, body angling toward Emily, as though drawn by an invisible thread. Miller frowned. "Easy, boy. What is it?" Ranger didn't answer with a bark. Not yet. But his breathing deepened, the rise and fall of his chest growing tense, controlled, deliberate. The first tremor of danger, so small no human could feel it, vibrated through the floor beneath Ranger's paws. He felt it. He always felt things before anyone else. And in just a few moments, Denver International Airport would learn exactly what that meant. Ranger's paws slowed until they nearly stopped, the leash tightening ever so slightly in Officer Miller's hand. It wasn't a sudden reaction, nothing abrupt enough to draw attention, but a subtle shift, the kind that only a seasoned handler could sense. The dog's head tilted, nostrils flaring again, drawing in the scent of something he couldn't categorize. It wasn't explosives. It wasn't narcotics. It wasn't anything he had been trained to detect. It was something alive, something changing, something wrong. Miller glanced down. Ranger's body was angled completely toward the pregnant woman now, toward Emily, every muscle taut but not yet aggressive, more like anticipation, more like warning. "Ranger," Miller murmured, tone low, steady, a voice meant to ground. "Heal." But Ranger didn't heal. He took one step forward instead. Emily, unaware of the attention fixed on her, shuffled toward a row of seats, lowering herself carefully, as though her body had turned heavy too quickly. She winced, just slightly, and pressed her hand deeper into her side. The movement was small, but Ranger caught it instantly. His ears pinned forward. The leash went rigid. Traveler chatter swirled around them. Rolling suitcases, whispers, distant laughter from a group of teenagers. But all of it blurred behind Ranger's tightening focus. His world narrowed to Emily's breathing, her heartbeat, the faint chemical shift carried in the air around her. The scent had notes he recognized from medical drills, scents tied to distress, rising blood pressure, stress hormones. But layered beneath it was something else, something that didn't belong to her. Ranger took another step, another breath. The metallic tang grew stronger. Miller followed Ranger's gaze and finally noticed that Emily had slid one hand under her sweater, gripping her stomach, not the way expectant mothers normally cradle their belly, but like someone trying to steady themselves before collapsing. Something flickered in Miller's expression. Concern, maybe. Recognition, faint and uncertain. "You okay, ma'am?" he called out. Emily looked up, startled, her eyes wide with the exhausted panic of someone trying not to cause a scene. "Oh, I'm fine," she said quickly. Just tired. Didn't sleep well." Ranger didn't believe a word of it. He stepped closer, chest expanding again with that quiet, controlled inhale. Miller tightened the leash. "Ranger, stay." But the command barely registered in the dog's mind. His instincts were no longer in training mode. They were in survival mode. Not for himself, but for her. Another vibration trembled beneath Ranger's paws. Very faint. Almost non-existent, but real. He felt Emily's heartbeat spike. He smelled the adrenaline surge. He sensed the tremor in her legs as she tried to stand. Danger was unfolding. Slow, silent, invisible. And Ranger knew he didn't have much time before it broke the surface. Ranger's sudden shift from alert to agitation happened so fast that even Officer Miller barely caught it. One moment, the dog was simply staring, intense, focused, unnervingly still. The next, his body stiffened, tail lowered, and a low, warning rumble traveled through his chest like distant thunder. Emily froze. Several passengers turned their heads, their conversations faltering as the sound rippled across the terminal. A growl from a service dog wasn't common. A growl from a K-9 on duty was unheard of. "Ranger," Miller warned, voice dropping into command mode. "Stand down." But Ranger didn't stand down. His instincts roared louder than any order. He lunged, not violently, but decisively, toward Emily. Miller barely managed to grip the leash with both hands, boots scraping the floor as Ranger pulled with a strength fueled by panic, not aggression. Emily stumbled back, her breath hitching. "Please, please keep him away," she cried, pressing herself against the nearest wall, arms wrapped protectively around her belly. A ripple of fear spread. Someone gasped. A man cursed under his breath. A teenager pointed and whispered. "What's wrong with that dog?" Ranger barked, sharp, explosive, echoing off the terminal's high ceiling. The sound made a baby start crying somewhere behind them. Miller tried to diffuse the chaos. "Everyone stay calm. He's trained. He's just detecting something. But no one listened. In their eyes, Ranger wasn't detecting anything. He was attacking a pregnant woman. Emily's legs trembled. Her face drained of color as she slid sideways along the wall, searching for distance, any distance. But Ranger followed her movement with laser precision, barking again, louder, the sound tearing through the air like an alarm bell. He wasn't trying to bite. He wasn't trying to scare her. He was trying to stop her. But the truth, what he sensed, was trapped inside instincts no human could interpret. "Get animal control!" someone shouted. "No, get TSA!" another voice snapped. Phones lifted. Passengers recorded. A security supervisor rushed forward, placing a hand on her radio. Emily's breathing grew ragged, uneven. The trembling in her knees became more visible. She was scared, terrified even, but not only because of the dog. Ranger sensed it. He felt her instability. He smelled the biochemical spike in her blood, the shift toward distress. His paws scraped frantically against the floor as he pulled harder, nails clicking rapid-fire like a desperate Morse code. His eyes, wide, amber, pleading, never left Emily's. "Ranger! Enough!" Miller barked. But to Ranger, this wasn't too much. This was not enough. Not yet. Because the danger tightening around Emily wasn't coming from anything she carried. It was coming from what she was standing over. And Ranger knew, long before any human would, that the clock had already begun its silent countdown. The commotion at Gate C-27 spread through the terminal like a shockwave. TSA officers abandoned their posts, rushing toward the scene. A supervisor yelled for passengers to step back, and a ripple of bodies shifted, forming a hesitant semicircle around Emily and Ranger. Ranger barked again, deep, forceful, a sound that belonged more on a battlefield than an airport hallway. Each bark reverberated through the floor, through Miller's grip, through Emily's bones. She clutched her belly, her breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts. "I'm not dangerous," Emily cried, voice cracking. "I swear I'm not doing anything." Her fear only intensified Ranger's urgency. His paws skidded against the polished tile as he lunged forward again. Miller gritted his teeth, planting his boots to hold the line. "Ranger, heel, now!" But Ranger didn't heel. His instincts were screaming, loud, primal, undeniable. And beneath them, something else was screaming too. A TSA agent, scanning the scene, misread everything instantly. "Everyone back! She might be carrying something." Emily shook her head furiously. "No, no, please!" "I'm just trying to get home." The tension spiraled. A crowd of travelers retreated, dragging their suitcases, shielding children, whispering frantic theories. Ranger didn't care about any of them. His nose dropped lower, inches above the ground, breathing fast, almost hyperventilating. His ears twitched violently at vibrations no one else felt. He jerked to the left, then snapped back to the right, mapping something beneath the surface with invisible lines only he could sense. Miller noticed. Not the crowd, not the panic, just Ranger's pattern. "Why the floor, buddy?" he whispered. "What are you feeling?" Ranger's chest expanded, with another trembling inhale, and he barked toward the ground. A different bark, sharper, urgent. That got Miller's full attention. A TSA supervisor approached Emily, voice firm. "Ma'am, I need you to move away from the wall. Slowly." Emily tried, really tried, but her legs buckled and she caught herself on a chair. Pain flashed through her face. Ranger snapped, barking so ferociously that two agents flinched backward. "He's trying to attack her," one shouted. "No," Miller said under his breath, his pulse spiking. "He's trying to keep her from moving." Emily pushed off the chair again, wobbling. Tears streaked down her cheeks. "Please, I need to sit." The moment she shifted her weight, Ranger threw his entire body forward, nearly yanking Miller off balance. His nails screeched across the floor. It wasn't aggression. It was desperation. And though no one knew it yet, Every inch Emily moved brought her closer to triggering something hidden beneath the terminal. Something fragile, damaged, and seconds from catastrophe. Ranger felt it. He felt everything. Emily tried again to steady herself, one hand gripping the back of a chair, the other pressed against her stomach as though holding something inside that wanted to tear free. Her breath shook, her knees gave out beneath her, and for a moment she was caught in a silent battle between gravity and willpower. And Ranger reacted as if the floor itself had erupted. He lunged forward with a ferocity that pulled Miller 2 full steps across the tiles. Ranger's paws slammed into the ground, his nose pressed flat against the cold surface. He inhaled sharply, twice, then snarled, the sound vibrating through his entire frame. Then he did something no one expected. He began to dig. The claws of a trained canine scraping against polished airport flooring made a horrifying metallic screech, like nails raked against a steel drum. Passengers flinched. A baby started crying. Someone shouted, "What the hell is he doing?" But Ranger didn't stop. He dug harder, faster, his shoulders shaking with each frantic motion, his tail stiff, ears pinned forward. Dust flicked up from between the tiles. So subtly no one noticed at first. But Ranger did. Ranger felt everything the building tried to hide. "Ranger!" Miller grabbed the harness, trying to pull him back. "Stop! There's nothing there!" But Ranger whipped his head around with a snarl. Not at Miller, but at the floor itself, as if warning it to stay back. The noise caught the attention of an airport maintenance technician nearby. He edged closer, eyes narrowing at the dog's fixation. "That's weird," the technician muttered. "This section shouldn't sound like that." "Sound like what?" a TSA supervisor snapped. The technician knelt and tapped the ground with a knuckle. A hollow thunk echoed upward. Passengers gasped. Emily froze mid-breath. Miller felt the hair rise on his arms. "That can't be right," the technician murmured. "There's no service panel under this section. It should be solid concrete." Ranger barked directly at the technician's hand, as if yelling, "Yes. Here, listen to me." Emily whimpered, sliding down the wall to sit before her legs collapsed completely. Sweat rolled down her temples. Her chest rose and fell in frantic waves. Ranger spun back to her and barked again, short, piercing, urgent. Not a threat. A command. Don't move. One TSA officer misunderstood everything and stepped between Ranger and Emily. "Back up, now!" Ranger's bark exploded into a snarl so fierce it rattled the man backward. Miller jerked the leash to save the officer from getting bitten. But deep down, Miller understood. Ranger wasn't trying to bite anyone. He was trying to stop the woman from moving even an inch. Because beneath her feet, beneath all of them, something was wrong. Something fragile, strained, overheated. Something that Ranger knew, by scent, by sound, by instinct, was about to fail. Officer Miller tightened his grip on Ranger's harness, but the dog was shaking, quivering with the kind of alertness Miller had only seen during disaster drills. Ranger wasn't frantic. He was focused. Terrifyingly focused. Emily slumped against the wall, her breaths shallow and ragged. Her hands trembled as she clutched her belly, fingers digging into the fabric of her maternity sweater. I don't feel good," she whispered, her voice almost swallowed by the terminal's hum. Ranger swung toward her instantly, not to intimidate, not to attack, to warn. His ears snapped forward, nostrils fluttering as he inhaled sharply. Then he lowered his head and pressed one paw flat against the tiles. He stayed like that, still, statuesque, as though he were listening through his bones. And then he flinched. A jolt ran through his front leg, up his shoulder, straight into his spine. He jerked back and barked, a single bark, short and bursting with alarm. Miller crouched. "Ranger, talk to me, buddy. What do you feel?" Ranger shifted again, lowering his chest almost to the floor. He breathed in, and his entire body recoiled. He snapped his head up, panting rapidly, the way he did during training when he detected burning wires or ozone. A maintenance technician knelt beside Miller, touching the same tile Ranger had pressed on. His fingers hovered above the floor, then landed. He pulled back instantly. "It's warm," passengers nearby murmured. Warm? The floor of an air-conditioned terminal? This was Denver in December. Nothing should feel warm. Emily groaned, her face twisting as a wave of pain rolled through her. "Something's wrong," she whispered. I can't stand." Ranger barked again, louder this time, panic sharpening the sound. He paced in front of her, blocking her legs with his body. When she tried to adjust her position, he snapped. Not at her, but at the air, as if screaming, "Don't move, don't move!" A TSA officer approached. "Ma'am, let's get you to a wheelchair." Ranger whirled, planting himself in front of Emily and snarling with enough force to make the officer stumble back. "Hey, control that animal!" another yelled. Miller didn't budge. He looked down at Ranger, into those wide, trembling amber eyes, and something in him clicked. Something he'd only learned after years with this dog. Ranger wasn't disobeying. He was overriding. The dog sensed something under the floor. Something heating, something straining, something moments from breaking. And Emily, pale, sweating, gasping, was positioned directly above it. Ranger let out a low, trembling whine, a sound so full of dread it silenced the crowd more effectively than any shouted command. Miller swallowed hard, adrenaline spiking. "What's under us?" he muttered. The technician's face drained of color. "Sir, there's a high-pressure conduit running beneath this part of the terminal." A beat. Then Ranger barked. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The kind of bark he only used when something was about to explode. The terminal felt suddenly smaller, like the walls and ceiling had inched closer without anyone noticing. A hush swept through the crowd, as if the air itself was bracing for something. Even the announcement speakers overhead fell briefly silent, leaving only the ragged, uneven breathing of a pregnant woman and the frantic panting of a German shepherd who refused to stand down. Officer Miller rose slowly, his voice steady but urgent. "Get maintenance, now, and clear this area." The TSA supervisor hesitated. "Are you sure this isn't just the dog reacting to her?" "We can't shut down a concourse because—" Ranger barked so violently that the woman jumped back, nearly dropping her radio. No one doubted anything after that. Within seconds, airport personnel began shifting passengers away from gate C-27. Voices echoed across the terminal. "Clear the area!" "Move back!" "Step behind the barrier!" Suitcases rolled, children clung to their parents, and fearful glances darted toward Emily, who sat slumped against the wall, pale as snow, sweat dripping down her neck. Her breaths came in shallow puffs, her fingers trembling as she pressed them against the ground beside her for stability. "I don't feel right," she whispered again. "Something is wrong." Ranger whimpered, stepping closer, until he stood between her and the world. His body shook, not from fear, but from intensity, from the primal certainty that something beneath them was alive and angry. 2 maintenance technicians arrived with scanning equipment, flat, handheld thermal readers that beeped softly when activated. Ranger immediately lunged toward them, barking in their faces, until Miller restrained him. "He's not attacking," Miller explained breathlessly. "He's telling you to hurry." The technicians exchanged nervous looks. They knelt and placed the scanner against the tile Ranger had been digging at. Beep. A soft tone. Nothing unusual. They moved it 6 inches left. Beep, beep. The reader flashed yellow. The younger technician frowned. "That's odd." Ranger stiffened. The technician shifted the device back, barely an inch. The scanner erupted in a series of shrill, escalating beeps and turned bright red. The older technician swore under his breath. "That's a temperature spike, a big one." "Could be faulty," the supervisor muttered. But Ranger barked again. 3 sharp barks, exactly like before. The signal he used when something was imminently dangerous. The bark Miller had learned to trust more than any detector. Miller's voice cracked through the air. "What's directly under us?" The older technician swallowed hard. "A high-pressure conduit, electrical feeder line and compressed air system for the gate's auxiliary power. If it overheats..." Emily's breath hitched. She tried to sit up straighter, but a wave of dizziness slammed her back into the wall. Ranger spun toward her, whining, nudging her leg with frantic urgency. "Ma'am," the TSA supervisor said, "we need to move you." "No!" Ranger surged forward so fast that Miller nearly lost his grip. The leash went taut, his claws screeching across tile. His teeth snapped, not at a person, but at the space, like he was trying to bite the air itself back into compliance. Everyone froze. Ranger wasn't protecting Emily from them. He was protecting her from moving. The technician spoke slowly, carefully. "If she shifts her weight, if she stands or falls, even just a few steps to the left, it could crack the conduit. If it's weakened, the sudden change in pressure might..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Emily's lips parted in a soft, horrified gasp. "Is something under me going to explode?" The technician didn't answer. Ranger did. A long, guttural growl rolled through him, low, vibrating, primal. His eyes locked on the tile beneath her. His fur bristled along his spine, each hair rising like static electricity. Then, he lowered his body once more, placing both front paws flat against the tile. A tremor pulsed upward, so slight no human noticed except one. Emily, her eyes widened. "I felt that." Miller crouched beside Ranger, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Buddy, show me." Ranger pressed down again, harder, and a second tremor rippled through the tile. A faint metallic creak followed, tiny but unmistakable. "Oh God," the younger technician breathed. "The casing's expanding. It's under stress." The TSA supervisor stepped backward, face draining of color. "What do we do?" she whispered. Ranger answered first. He barked, rapid, frantic, snapping like a metronome of danger. He lunged toward Emily, then back to the tile, then back to Emily. His whole body communicating a single message. Don't let her fall. Don't let her stand. Don't let her move. Emily clutched her belly tighter, grimacing as a sharp pain speared through her abdomen. A contraction. Too early, too sudden. Sweat rolled down her cheek. "I think something's wrong with the baby," she whispered. And in that moment, Ranger's panic wasn't only about the tile. He could smell the hormonal shift, the metallic tang of rising blood pressure, the scent of distress flooding Emily's system. 2 dangers, one above, one below. And he was the only one sensing both, the only one fighting both. Miller rose to his feet, his voice firm. "Shut down this area. Evacuate the surrounding gates. We need emergency response here, now." Ranger barked again, loud, piercing, a final warning blast. The truth was no longer hidden. Something beneath that tile was seconds away from failing, and Ranger knew things were about to get much, much worse. Emergency responders rushed into the concourse, their boots thumping across the floor in quick, coordinated strides. Yellow barricades unfolded like wings, creating a perimeter around the danger zone. The crowd was now held at a distance, whispers growing into frantic murmurs. Emily sat trembling against the wall, one hand braced on the floor, the other clutching her belly as though she could hold her child, and herself together through sheer will. Her breaths came quicker, harsher, each inhale catching on something sharp inside her ribs. But Ranger wasn't looking at her right now. He was staring at the floor. His nose hovered barely an inch above the tiles, inhaling, analyzing, decoding what no machine could read fast enough. His pupils were dilated, ears twitching violently, with every faint groan rising from the structure beneath. A small crew of engineers arrived with heavier equipment, thermal imagers, acoustic scanners, and a portable panel extraction tool. "Clear space," one of them ordered. "We're opening the floor." Ranger barked sharply, circling the technicians like a shepherd driving sheep, forcing them to widen their perimeter. Not because he didn't want them near the tile, but because they were dangerously close to Emily. He wouldn't let anyone near her unless he understood their intent. "Easy, boy," Miller murmured, though even he felt Ranger's fear vibrating through the leash like electricity. The lead engineer knelt and placed an acoustic sensor on the tile. A loud crack echoed through the scanner. Everyone froze. The engineer's eyes widened. Pressure's building underneath. The casing's warped. It might be hemorrhaging heat internally. Ranger snarled at the tile, fur fully raised. The sound wasn't directed at any person. It was directed at the danger. "What does that mean?" a TSA officer asked, voice quivering. The engineer wiped sweat from his brow. "If the heat continues to rise, that conduit could burst. Worst-case scenario? An explosion. Enough to destroy this section of the terminal." "Jesus," Miller swallowed. The crowd behind the barricades gasped. Emily's fingers slipped on the tile as another contraction seized her body. She let out a small cry. Quiet, but piercing. Sharp enough to cut through the chaos. Ranger spun so fast his nails clicked like castanets, his body forming a shield in front of her. A paramedic rushed in with a medical bag. "Ma'am, your breathing is unstable. Your blood pressure looks high." "We need to check," Ranger snarled, standing squarely between the paramedic and Emily. "He's protecting her," Miller said quickly. "Let him understand you first." The paramedic paused, held out both palms, slowly lowering into a crouch. "It's okay, buddy. I'm here to help her. See? No harm, no threat." Ranger's growl softened, but did not disappear. The paramedic reached for Emily's wrist to take her pulse. The moment he touched her, Emily jerked and let out a sharp gasp, her whole body tightening. Her pulse was racing, her skin ice cold, her breathing shallow and irregular. "This isn't normal pregnancy pain," the paramedic muttered. "Her body's under severe stress. Something is destabilizing her system." Ranger whined, pacing in agitated half circles, tail rigid, head whipping back toward the floor, then toward Emily. He was tracking two emergencies at once. Like trying to split his instincts into two separate lives, he had to save simultaneously. "Shock?" a TSA officer asked. The paramedic shook his head. "More than that. There's hormonal imbalance, elevated stress hormones, possible preeclampsia. She shouldn't stand. She shouldn't fall. She shouldn't be carried abruptly." Ranger barked, one loud defiant bark, right into the paramedic's chest. "Yeah, buddy," the paramedic whispered. "I know. You're right." Another contraction tore through Emily. She whimpered, curling inward. Ranger pressed his body against her legs to keep her from sliding sideways. Then, a loud groan rolled beneath the tile. A deep, metallic moan, as if something under the floor was bending. The engineers jolted. One raised the thermal imager. "It's redlining," he said, voice cracking. "The heat is climbing fast." The image on the monitor glowed angry red, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ranger barked again, 3 staccato barks, the alarm bark. "Back away," Miller ordered. "Everyone back." But Emily couldn't back away. She couldn't even move. Her vision blurred, her breathing shallow, her body swaying as if caught in invisible waves. Ranger pressed his forehead gently to her knee, grounding her, before spinning back toward the danger. The engineers pushed a small extraction device into position. "We have to relieve the pressure and cool it from above," one explained. "If we don't..." A violent vibration ripped through the floor, traveling straight through Ranger's paws. He yelped, not in fear, but in recognition. This was it. The moment before catastrophe. Ranger threw his weight forward, barking furiously, forcing everyone, even the engineers, to jump back. "Move!" Miller shouted. "Everyone move!" Emily clutched her belly, a tear streaking down her cheek. "Please, I don't want my baby to..." Ranger turned to her, his eyes, glossy, burning with urgency, locked onto hers. He wasn't going to let anything happen to her. Not to her child. Not to anyone above this ticking danger. His instincts were screaming louder than the rising alarm. Something below them was failing. Something inside Emily was failing. And Ranger knew. He had seconds to somehow save both. The floor groaned again, louder this time. A long, metallic scree rose from beneath the tile, like something twisting under unbearable strain. The engineers froze mid-motion, gripping their equipment like lifelines. "Pressure's hitting critical," one of them shouted. "We have to vent it, or the whole conduit could blow." Ranger reacted, before the words even finished leaving the man's mouth. He lunged forward, barking so violently that Miller nearly lost his footing. The leash snapped tight. Ranger clawed at the tiles again, frantic, desperate, his breath sharp and rapid as he tried to drag Miller backward. Not toward the danger, but away from it. He wanted everyone away. "Miller, pull him back!" a TSA officer yelled. But Miller didn't. He saw the terror in Ranger's eyes. Not the fear of violence or chaos, but the fear of losing someone, losing everyone. Ranger wasn't panicking because the conduit might burst. He was panicking because Emily was still sitting directly above it. "We need to move her," Miller barked. The paramedic shook his head. "We can't move her fast. Her blood pressure is spiking. A sudden shift could trigger a seizure." "She can't stay there either," a technician snapped over the sound of the scanner's shrill alarm. "The casing is seconds away from rupture." Another contraction hit Emily, ripping through her abdomen like a blade of electricity. She curled forward, groaning, tears streaking down her cheeks. Her whole body trembled. I can't breathe," she gasped. Ranger whipped toward her. His ears flattened, and a soft, heartbroken whine left his throat, the kind he only made when someone was hurt. He pressed his forehead gently against her leg again, anchoring her to the moment, reminding her she wasn't alone. Then he spun back to the floor, barking with renewed fury. The lead engineer knelt. "We're opening the tiles. Get ready." He inserted the prying device under the edge. The tool hissed as it engaged. Ranger barked even louder, shoving his body against Miller's legs, pushing him away. And then the ground trembled. A crack shot across the tile like lightning. Emily screamed. Ranger exploded into motion. He leapt sideways, throwing his entire body weight against Emily's knees. Not enough to move her fast, not enough to jolt her dangerously, but enough to shift her 3 inches to the right. 3 inches that mattered. Because right where she had been sitting, the tile buckled. A burst of scalding air shot upward, hissing through the fracture like steam escaping a broken valve. The heat rolled out in a wave, washing over everyone's legs. A few passengers gasped behind the barricades. The conduit was failing. "Move her!" the engineer yelled. "Right now!" The paramedic made a split-second decision. "We can't lift her fast. We guide her. Slow. Controlled." Ranger circled behind Emily, pressing his body against her back for support, using his strength as a brace as Miller crouched on her right side. "It's okay," Miller whispered. "We're going to stand, nice and steady." Emily cried out as another contraction hit, her entire body trembling. "I can't. My legs." Ranger whined and nuzzled her arm until she grabbed his fur. Then, inch by inch, he rose with her, lifting her as much with his presence as with his body. Her hand clenched his collar. "Good boy. Good boy." For the first time since the chaos began, Ranger's tail moved, just once. A small, hopeful thump against her calf. Together, the paramedic, Miller, and Ranger maneuvered her away from the cracking tile. The moment her weight left that spot, the engineer yanked the loosened section free, exposing a glowing conduit casing beneath, bulging, distorted, radiating heat like an angry furnace. "Holy!" someone breathed. "If she'd stayed there," Ranger barked sharply as if to finish the sentence, "she'd be gone." Emily collapsed into the wheelchair the paramedics rushed forward with. Her breaths came in quick, jagged sobs. Her skin glistened with sweat. "I thought," she whispered, voice cracking. "I thought the dog hated me." Miller kneeled beside her. "Ma'am, he wasn't trying to hurt you." Ranger pressed his head softly against her belly, his chest rising and falling in exhausted tremors. "He was trying to save you." The crowd, silent, breathless, watched as Ranger closed his eyes and breathed deeply, as if making sure both mother and child were still there, still alive. Above them, the conduit continued to hiss, glowing with the threat of collapse. But Emily was safe, because Ranger had acted in the only language he knew: instinct, devotion, courage. And he wasn't done yet. Paramedics began pushing Emily's wheelchair toward the emergency exit, one hand on the back of the chair, the other clutching a medical kit. Her breaths still trembled, each inhale sharp and thin, like a note held too high. Her lips had turned pale, and sweat dripped from her jawline, as though her body were fighting itself. Ranger followed, head low, movements tense, his paws tapping the tile in quick, anxious steps. He refused to fall behind. "Let him come," the paramedic said when a TSA agent tried to block Ranger's path. "I've seen working dogs do this before. He knows something's wrong." Miller stayed close behind the dog, one hand on the leash. Though at this point, Ranger was leading him, not the other way around. They burst through the service door into a quieter corridor, the sound of alarms fading behind them into a distant hum. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a pale glow on Emily's strained face. Her hand suddenly shot forward, gripping Ranger's collar. "Please, don't leave," she whispered. Ranger pressed against her leg, offering warmth. A soft, trembling whine vibrated from his throat, part reassurance, part desperation. The paramedic knelt in front of her, lifting her wrist between his fingers. Her pulse is too high, and her blood pressure, damn, it's climbing fast. He looked at Miller. How long was she sitting there? Maybe 10, 15 minutes. That's long enough for stress to push her over the threshold. He pulled a small flashlight from his pocket and shone it in Emily's eyes. "Do you feel dizzy? Vision blurry?" Emily nodded weakly. "It's like..." "The room keeps tilting," Ranger barked once, sharp and immediate. "He's right," the paramedic said. "She's showing signs of early-onset preeclampsia. Might be severe. She could have seized if she'd stood too fast, or if the pressure spike startled her." Emily covered her mouth, tears brimming. "I didn't know. I thought I was just tired." Ranger sat in front of her, staring into her eyes, with unwavering intensity. His gaze didn't waver even once, as though he was trying to hold her steady with his eyes alone. The paramedic leaned closer. "Ma'am, can you feel your baby moving?" Emily swallowed. "Not as much as earlier." Ranger whimpered again, louder this time, pacing in a tight circle, anxiety pouring out of him. "Okay," the paramedic said, snapping into action. "We have to transport her now. Call ahead to Denver ER. They need to prep for a hypertensive crisis and fetal monitoring. Two airport police officers wheeled the chair toward the awaiting ambulance. Ranger matched each movement perfectly, shoulder to wheel, step for step, ears pinned forward, tail stiff and worried. As they reached the ambulance bay, the winter air rushed in, cold, sharp, cleansing. Snowflakes drifted down like pale ashes in the wind. Emily shivered. Ranger moved even closer, leaning gently against her leg, offering his warmth. The paramedics extended the ramp. "Let's get her loaded," one said. But when the wheelchair reached the edge of the ramp, Emily's body lurched. She cried out, her hand clutching her belly, knuckles white. Ranger leapt forward instantly, placing himself half across her lap and half blocking the edge, as if protecting her from falling. His body trembled with the effort. "Easy," the paramedic shouted. "Hold on to the rails." Emily's vision blurred. Her breaths came in rapid, shallow gasps. Her pulse pounded at her temples. Ranger barked, not loud but urgent, a pleading bark. "Let's get her stabilizing O2, the paramedic said, fitting a small mask over her nose and mouth. "Come on, ma'am." Deep breaths. Emily blinked down at Ranger. Through tears, through fear, through the fog of pain, she whispered, You knew, didn't you?" Ranger lowered his head onto her knee, his ear brushing her hand. His chest rose and fell in a slow, anchoring rhythm, inviting her body to match it. For a moment, Emily's breathing softened, her trembling eased. Inside the ambulance, equipment beeped, lights flashed, and the city hummed quietly beyond the concrete walls of the bay. But Ranger saw only her. He watched her like he had watched the failing conduit, with unwavering focus, with every instinct alive, with the kind of loyalty that didn't need words to explain itself. When the ambulance doors swung closed, the paramedic looked at Miller. "You realize this dog didn't just detect the danger under the floor," he said. "He detected hers." Miller looked down at Ranger. The dog's eyes rose to meet his. Instinct, courage, grace, all wrapped in fur and heartbeat. And this rescue mission was far from over. Back inside the terminal, chaos had shifted into something quieter, something shaken, humbled. Yellow tape still stretched across Gate C-27. Engineers worked beneath the open floor panel, voices low and tense as they examined the warped, overheated conduit that had nearly ruptured. TSA agents stood guard, answering confused passengers and directing flights to new locations. No one argued about the shutdown anymore, not after seeing what could have happened. But the center of attention wasn't the damaged infrastructure. It was Ranger. The German Shepherd sat beside Officer Miller near the emergency exit door, fur still ruffled from adrenaline, chest rising and falling in deep, steady breaths. His eyes flicked again and again toward the ambulance bay outside, waiting, worrying, wanting to see the woman he'd fought so hard to protect. A few agents whispered nearby. "That dog saved the terminal. Did you see how he kept her from moving?" He knew something was wrong before any machine did. And they were right. For the first time since the incident began, Miller crouched next to Ranger, resting a hand on the dog's shoulder. "You did good, buddy," he murmured. His voice wavered, just a little. "You saved a lot of people today." Ranger leaned into him, but his gaze remained fixed on the frosted windows of the ambulance bay, waiting. Minutes stretched. Then a figure approached, Airport Medical Officer Claire Henderson, still in her fluorescent vest, her cheeks flushed from the cold outside. Everyone straightened as she neared. Miller stood. "How is she?" Claire exhaled, snowflakes melting on her shoulders. "Stabilized. They got her to Denver General in time." Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor, weak but hopeful. "She had a hypertensive surge," Claire continued. "Early-stage preeclampsia. The stress from the incident triggered it faster. If she had tried to walk across the terminal, She could have collapsed or seized. Miller swallowed, glancing down at Ranger. The dog had known something was wrong with her body before even trained professionals could see it. "And the baby?" he asked quietly. Claire's face softened. "Fetal heartbeat is strong. They're keeping both under observation, but the doctors say the baby is safe." Ranger let out a low, relieved sound, half sigh, half whine, and placed his chin gently on Miller's boot. Claire smiled. "I don't know how your dog sensed all that, but Emily keeps asking for him. Says he's the reason she and her baby are alive." Miller nodded. "He wants to see her too." Claire placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Let EMS get her settled. They'll call when it's okay." As she walked away, passers-by began to gather, quietly at first, watching Ranger as though he were a living miracle. Some snapped photos. Others whispered prayers. One woman wiped her eyes. A man in a business suit knelt and whispered, "Good dog," before stepping back. But Ranger paid none of them any mind. His eyes stayed fixed on the glass door leading to the hospital bay, waiting for the moment he could confirm, for himself, that Emily and her baby were truly safe. And for the first time since the floor trembled beneath his paws, the terminal felt still again. Still, but forever changed. 1 month later, winter sunlight drifted softly over Denver General Hospital, turning the snow outside into a field of shimmering gold. The world felt quieter in January, slower, gentler, like the storms of December had finally released their grip. And inside room 412, Emily Stokes sat by the window, cradling her newborn son against her chest. The baby, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, slept with the peaceful heaviness only newborns possess. Tiny fist curled, chest rising in small, steady breaths. Emily brushed a thumb along his cheek, letting tears gather in her eyes as the memory of that day at the airport replayed in the back of her mind. She never heard the conduit groaning beneath her. She never saw the danger she was sitting on. She never realized how close she had come to collapsing from the pressure in her body. But one living being had sensed all of it as clearly as daylight. A knock came at the door, gentle, almost hesitant. Emily looked up. "Come in." The door opened, and Officer Miller stepped inside, holding Ranger's leash. Ranger patted in quietly, the soft click of his claws on the linoleum echoing like a familiar heartbeat. Emily gasped softly. "Oh, Ranger." Her voice cracked, not with fear, but with the kind of gratitude that lives deeper than language. Ranger's ears lifted, and he approached slowly, as if understanding the fragile atmosphere of the room. Miller smiled. "He's been waiting to see you." Emily reached out with a trembling hand. Ranger closed the distance in 2 steps, resting his chin gently on the side of her bed. His body relaxed in a way Miller rarely saw, completely, utterly at peace. His tail swept once across the floor. Emily laughed through her tears. "I missed you too." She shifted slightly, lowering the baby so Ranger could see him. "This is Noah," she whispered. "He's here. Because of you." Ranger leaned in, nose inches from the tiny face. His breath warmed the baby's cheek. Noah stirred, blinking up at the blur of golden fur and soft brown eyes hovering above him. Then, miraculously, Noah's tiny hand opened and closed around one of Ranger's whiskers. Ranger didn't pull away. He didn't flinch. He simply lowered his head, accepting the touch with a stillness that felt sacred. Emily smiled through trembling lips. "I think he remembers your voice, all that barking. Maybe he heard you, even from inside." Miller chuckled. "Wouldn't surprise me." They stayed like that for a long moment. The new mother, the newborn child, the dog who had saved them both. Winter sunlight glowed across Ranger's back, making his fur shimmer like warm amber. Emily wiped her cheeks. "We gave him a middle name." Miller raised a brow. "Oh?" She nodded, voice soft. Noah Ranger Stokes. Miller blinked, stunned. Emily, that's... He deserves it, she said, stroking Ranger's head. He protected us before he even met us. Ranger closed his eyes, leaning into her hand. A long, peaceful exhale left him, as if he, too, understood the weight of the moment. As if he finally allowed himself to believe everything truly turned out okay. The baby slept. Emily healed. And Ranger simply stayed. A silent guardian with 4 paws and a heart tuned to danger and to love, with equal devotion. The snow outside continued to fall in slow, gentle flakes. But inside room 412, life, new, fragile, miraculous, had taken its first breath. And Ranger, the dog who sensed what no human could, sat watch over it all. Sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes don't stand on stages or wear shining medals. Sometimes, they walk quietly beside us, on 4 paws, listening to dangers we cannot hear, sensing storms long before they break, and guarding lives we never realized were in danger. Ranger didn't save Emily and her baby because he was trained to. He saved them because loyalty runs deeper than instinct, because some dogs carry a kind of courage that can't be taught, only lived. And in that terminal, on that winter morning, a single heartbeat wrapped in fur changed the course of 2 others forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Pawprints of Valor, where every bark, every paw print, and every heartbeat tells a story of courage waiting to be heard.